Operation Truth. The show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Hi, everyone. This is Lou Palumbo. This is Operation Truth. With me, as always, is my co-host and inspiration in many ways when it comes to these discussions. He's just so full of pertinent perspective is Tom Fuentes, a former assistant director of the FBI. I wish I could tell you things are changing for the better. That just simply isn't the truth. And as I told you in prior podcasts, Tom and I are committed to telling you the truth, independent of what you may be hearing from any political affiliation or news outlet. And by the way, I remind you that the news outlets, your 24-hour news cycle, is actually at the root of the problem in the division and polarization, this overall divide in our country. The amount of hate that's just being demonstrated on a day-to-day basis is just alarming, and it doesn't seem to be an end in sight. The messaging has to change. The agenda has to change. The bias has to be eliminated from the media because they're creating your optic and your narrative. I've said this to you before. We're going to say it until you get it. You know, stop believing everything you hear on CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. They're all agenda-driven. Excuse me. There is some credible information that comes from all these media outlets, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, it's far few and in between because they talk about election interference. Interesting. No one is attempting to influence this election more than your media. And unfortunately, the deck seems to be stacked on the side of the left. And we're not saying that because we're fully supportive of the right. I happen to be very conservative in nature, especially when it comes to issues regarding your safety, revolving around your safety. In reference to the rest of these socially sensitive issues, I have a big open mind, and I just touch on one example. Who you sleep with, I don't care. I hope you're happy. Guard your privacy and keep it to yourself. I'm tired of listening as to what people do in their private lives. It's just not pertinent to me. I want the best people running the country, regardless of their ethnicity, their religious denomination, their gender choice, lifestyle choice, anything. Just, the best people. I don't think the rest of us care really anymore, or if they do, very little as to what anybody's doing in their personal life. I think where it gets a little muddled is when we start having men in women's locker rooms. And for anyone that doesn't understand, that's just simply unacceptable. I don't know what to say to you. Maybe if you had children, it might be a little closer to the bone. But we have a lot of problems here institutionally. Last episode, you listened, Tom and I talk about the lack of credibility in the government. Tom is particularly upset with the FBI's loss of credibility. He and other men like Chris Schwecker and Kevin Brock, they invested so much of their lives into making the FBI what we knew it once was. And I still believe, and Tom might arbitrate this, there's an enormous amount of credibility in the FBI. I believe 99% of that agency, its men and women, are committed to the mission, which is to keep this nation safe. And Tom might arbitrate that. I leave that to him. Probably knows better than I do. But I just, maybe what you're listening to is what I want to believe too, to be candid with you, because I've always believed so heavily in this institution. It's a kind of one of a kind, the only one of its type on this planet. Make no mistakes. There is nothing on par with the FBI. And there are other good organization similar to in other parts of this country. Other parts of the world. I think the UK has a good operation. I suspect that France and Germany do in other countries, but the FBI stands alone. There are no laboratories, no reconciliation of forensic information that is managed the way the FBI manages it. I would say that, and even to this day, independent of the fact that some of their higher management officials, and literally just a handful, have lost their way. They've decided to become part of the politics. I say to you every time, please put down your political lens. Look at objectively the course this country's on. And it's not well. It's not good. They've misled us in regards to this foreign policy issue. This withdrawal from Afghanistan has been highly critical by our State Department. Not by Tom and I, but people in the know, many generals coming forward saying they were told not to do it this way. They did it anyway. They try to deflect and lie to you that this is what Donald Trump did. No, Donald Trump set out a criteria lending itself to withdrawal. And he also told them, if you deviate, we know where you live. Those are words that never come out of Joe Biden's mouth. Never could, never would, and never will. And I'm not meaning to be picking on Joe Biden, but the truth is the truth. This whole issue with transition to the energy sector, this is a ruse, ladies and gentlemen. All your electricity, not all, the majority of it is generated through steam turbines fueled by fossil fuel and nuclear. And there's that word nuclear, which is the transitional discussion away from fossil fuel. Also, wind and solar contribute to the generation of electricity. These lithium batteries, when they catch fire, you almost can't extinguish them. They had over 200 in New York City. You almost cannot extinguish them. Not to mention, you talk about the Green Deal. When you dispose of them, they destroy the planet. Cultivating them is harmful to the planet. Just another big lie. I'm wondering if this is just becoming one big lie. We lie about taking care of our mentally ill. I listen to the big bipartisan legislation related to gun control. We're going to have enhanced background checks. Folks, I'm really sorry. I don't know what that means. And I'm fairly gun literate. I know that if we run your background, we identify whether or not you've been convicted of a felony, which denies you the right of owning a gun as well as voting. They talked about school safety. I haven't seen it. I know it's state by state. In Florida, for example, you can't walk onto any academic environment without there being a multitude of law enforcement agents there during the school day. When you go to their football games, 4 and 5 marked radio cars and a supervisor, probably plainclothesmen there as well. They invest heavily. I don't see them doing that in New York. I can tell you that. I know it personally. They're not. They're trying to hire security personnel right now, some out of the law enforcement community. And by the way, they don't want them to be armed. How do we mitigate an active shooter if we're not armed? We are trained professionals, more today than ever before. Now, I won't tell you that there aren't flies in the ointment in law enforcement, because clearly there are. We're having a problem generating individuals that are interested in pursuing this career. That's candidate selection. Compensation has gotten better. Training is the best it's ever been. I can't speak for the federal agencies. Tom would probably be able to allude to that better than I. But we're going in the right direction, but we're just not pulling the trigger in totality. I don't know of any other state other than Florida, and I'm sure there are states out there that protect their children in the learning environment as well. I don't know if that's the case. But I heard this legislation passed. That's right. I heard them say something about mental health. Give you a little background on why we're having a mental health problem. During the 70s, Geraldo Rivera, he conducted a symposium, so to speak, or an assessment of Willowbrook, which is a mental facility in Staten Island, and the living conditions. I don't think deplorable is the word. I don't think there's a word to identify exactly how diminished they were. That resulted in Creedmoor, Pilgrim State, and Willowbrook being closed. And those are 3 major facilities in New York metropolitan area that would accommodate people that are mentally ill. By the way, guys, they're all on the street with you now. I didn't see anything come out of this about mentally ill people, our homeless, our veterans. By the way, not supporting Donald Trump at this point. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'd like you to connect these dots on your own. But Donald Trump passed legislation that said our veteran didn't have to rely on a VA hospital and wait for months at times, oftentimes expiring, before they could get help. He said they could go to any hospital, step in the right direction. We're seeing a lot of funding in the Ukraine. If you listen to our last episode, Tom speaks in a less than flattering manner about what's going on there, and this government's tied to it. Just listen to the last episode, guys, and you listen to what Tom says about how convoluted and corrupt the relationship is. And we don't tell you, take us on our word. Do your own research. This is a fact. There are 20 shell corporations that exist that the president, as a vice president, has been tied to, as well as his family. No secret now. Millions of dollars being paid to his son. Difficult to understand how you could be a crack addict and somebody would want to do business with you, selling you popcorn, no less, being involved in a company like Burisma if it didn't lend itself to political favor, or Russia, where supposedly, which has been supported as I understand it now, $3 million was given from a Russian mayor's wife. I mean, this, you know what? And we're entitled to know the truth. And I encourage you to pursue the truth, independent of your politics. We're at an interesting crossroad. I don't know what happened to this country. This is not the America Tom and I grew up in. And we've had our bumps and bruises along the way. Every country during the history of civilization has, just in case you haven't noticed. My thing is to learn from your mistakes and go forward. Learn from them. Don't be bogged down in them. Don't beat the people up who committed them. If the people that committed them did this with ill intent, then you have to basically eliminate them from the equation. Don't let them be part of anything any longer and focus on the people that want to leave this place better than they found it, which is what Tom and I are really trying to do, which is what we've done with our lives. I've been protecting people for over 50 years. It's just something that's ingrained in my nature because I have that skill set. Oh, by the way, I learned how to protect myself first. That was part of my own process of evolution through time. Lying to us about gun control, folks, because I love when they jump up there about assault rifle bans and we're going to give you money for your guns. It isn't happening. We don't even know how many guns are in this country. The media, the liberal media, has accepted the notion of about 500 million, the ATF mentioning as many as 1 billion. The truth is it could be far more than that because it wasn't until the 1968 Gun Control Act that they required serial numbers to be applied to firearms. States never needed to keep records of them because we didn't have mass shootings prior to April 29th of 1999 at Columbine. We want to focus on the gun. We lost a generation or 2 or 3 of kids so far here. Ask yourself how that happened. By the way, take a look at the genre movie out of Hollywood. I hate to say it, the action heroes, teaching our kids that the remedy, to injustice and oppression is violence, is killing, right? The video games that we seem to allow them to consume. Why do we need video games like this with our children or for anyone? I got the First Amendment, but the First Amendment doesn't allow you to run into a movie theater and yell fire. Why should something that's potentially so toxic to your mental and emotional state be allowed to be consumed? You can't look at pornography, right? You're not allowed to distribute pornography, but you can distribute all these video games that teach our children weapon systems and tactics and how to employ them. And the cuckoo left the clock here, folks. This is about leadership. I want to get into this whole thing with the borders with you, Tom, because this is something that it's getting funnier and funnier by the day. I don't like to listen to the Democrats tell us that the Republicans are holding up a law or a bill that would address the border. So we're clear about this. And this is not my opinion, conjecture, speculation. It lends itself to allowing 2,500 illegal immigrants into the country every day, which translates to about 1.8 million per year. What are we going to do with the 15 million plus that we already have here? And by the way, guys, you know the truth? The same truth that's attached to the gun control discussion, we have no idea how many people are illegally in this country. We have unmonitored sectors of the border. We keep talking about the southern border. 8 million people have had encounters. We have 2 million that are gotaways, those detected through technology. How about giving us the number at the northern border? How about reminding us of the number of illegals that overstay their visas and violate our immigration laws, which is the largest number prior to this whole border issue we've had in the past 3 years. Guys, we're not trying to poison your thinking or turn you against your government. We're trying to induce you to making better choices that secure the future of your country. Let me tell you this. Without a country, you won't have to worry about pro-choice, your First Amendment, due process. Keep taking this place for granted. For everybody sitting on your haunches and not getting out and voting your conscience, not your political agenda. Guys, I got the memo with Donald Trump. We hate him so much, we're prepared to destroy the country because your country's being destroyed right now in as many ways as we can quantify. Your economy, your energy sector, your foreign policy, your borders. The crime in your cities is through the roof. Indiscriminate committing of crime by the criminal element without any type of accountability. Tom, let me bring you in rather than continue on this thing. I want to talk to you about this whole border issue. You've heard Christopher Wray. I know you're not a fan. You can elaborate as to why, if you so choose. But what's the end game here, Tom, with the border?
There is no end game. The border is going to stay wide open as long as the current administration is in power. And if Kamala Harris gets elected president, she wants to continue the same open border policy. So in that case, that's the end game, the invasion of the United States by migrants from all over the world. So the only possibility of stopping that is the election in November. Because Trump has already stated if he's elected, he's going to close the border again. But Kamala Harris has already been continuing to say, she supports the open border policy that we've had now for almost 4 years, and she'll continue it. So that's the end game. It either stays the same if the Democrats are back in power, or possibly if the Trump people come in, that he'll end it. Two choices.
I keep asking a very simple question. I get no answers. You can communicate with us through OperationTruthOfficial.com. Who is supposed to benefit from letting 15 million plus people into this country that we haven't vetted? And we've spoken about this before, and this is right up Tom's alley and my alley. We conduct background checks on people. There are no databases to reference in these foreign countries. They change their ID like you change your underwear, hopefully once a day. Passports, birth certificates, driver's licenses. We have no idea who's coming into this country. I don't understand the lack of morality, the lack of conscience of this government right now. The American public should be up in arms over what's going on. This is a direct threat to your national security. We're having sexual assaults of our women and children, robberies. By the way, don't listen to the lies, because I have a very interesting inroads. The migrant crime, for example, in New York City is skyrocketing. What did you think was going to happen when you let all of the migrants into New York, which is in excess of 500,000 now, and they had no place to live, to sleep? They're sleeping on sidewalks, can't make gainful employment. What did you think they were going to do? You know, I am so gravely concerned about the Democrats today, and I'm not anti-Democrat. I voted Democrat before. If you listen to other podcasts, my all-time favorite president was John F. Kennedy. He was a Democrat. You need to listen to his speeches and addresses, and you'll understand why. This man was brilliant. He spoke to bringing the country together, not dividing it. His agenda was the love of this country and its future, and the future of its people, its young people. Next guy in line after that's Ronald Reagan. I argue all you want. Won 49 of the 50 states on re-election, his second term. Galvanized the country, had the undivided attention. This concept is absent from the conversation since Reagan. I mean, and I'm not overly critical of the Bush family, although their foreign policies were detrimental to the country. This insinuation into the Middle East region of the world where they hate us. Don't know what you were thinking about. I'm sure it was driven by money. You know, the Clinton administration, which was rather interesting, the second half of it was very productive. He collaborated well with Newt Gingrich and the Republicans, and got a lot of good legislation passed, lending itself to the economic stability of the country, balanced the budget. Obama, who they refer to like the golden boy, man, are you being misled, because this redefinition of America started with him. He told you he was going to redefine America. He embraced the progressive movement, which is basically destroying the Democratic Party from within. The anti-Semitism within that party that they're not even shy about. Tlaib, Omar, Jayapal, just to mention a few. I don't know how the Jewish community votes for Democrats. I don't know if you're totally stupid or semi-stupid. They're not worried about you or your people. They're worried about their own agenda that is loyal to Islam. And I've spoken about Islam before. European nations like Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Hungary will not let people who are Muslim into their countries because of the lack of compatibility. You know, something else, guys, I've said before, you need to understand. I know that whole thing with the Statue of Liberty. You're tired, you're poor, you're wretched masses, yearning to breathe. That was placed in New York Harbor in the late 1800s. That was not a foundation or a building block of the United States at the inception of this country. I don't think if the founding fathers ever had to propose to them that we were going to entertain 190 plus countries under one umbrella, and we were going to keep everybody's needs and wants fed. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. There are cultural differences. And I've spoken to people who are Muslim, who are friends of mine. You should speak to them about what the Quran alludes to. Don't listen to me. Find someone who's objective, who's prepared to tell you the truth about this. But this border issue, I don't know what to say. This lack of morality, I don't know what it is we need to do before this government's held accountable for what they've done to the border. Guys, just so you're clear, the economy's cyclical. It goes up and it goes down, right? Your foreign policies, be honest with you, all sides of the aisle have been misled in that regard. This border issue is quite different. Would you agree with that, Tom? It's put our nation at risk. Your FBI director on a regular basis is telling you that. What is the White House not hearing? What is Homeland Security not hearing? I said in the last podcast, you've listened to Mayorkas bold-faced lie to you. Kamala Harris, bold-faced lie to you. The border's secure. What border are they talking about? Maybe they're talking about a border in another country where they are secure, but they're not talking about our country, not the northern border or the southern border. On the northern border, it's going to hell in a handbasket in Vermont and Maine. And it's starting to impact cities like Boston because funding and accommodation that's been earmarked for the minority community is being deflected into the migrants, and they're up in arms, same way they are in Chicago, by the way. Go take a look at Denver. Don't listen to me, guys. Get off your backsides and go find out for yourself. If you're listening to this, invest in your future. We're not here to spoon feed you. We're giving you food for thought. We want you to think about this. You know, the country's at an incredible crossroad today. And Tom pointed out something, and I cannot argue with him. Tom is a bit more fervent in expressing who he wants to support, you know, in the next election. I'm trying to make you think for yourself, folks, without telling you the course we have to take. I got the memo on Donald Trump. I got it. Look at the condition of this country. I'm listening to this economy. I am feeling this economy. I never thought I would the way that I am, but my overhead has gone up 28% as far as a living accommodation. My fuel bill, my water bill, over 25%. I won't even tell you what my food is because I'm feeding children. It's just ridiculous. I'm gassing 5 cars a day. I know other people are living what I'm living. You really are buying into this? And you think this next election, who you vote for, won't define the country in the future? I am gravely concerned that if the conservative element doesn't get control of this country, what the liberal element has done, they give it away, right? We won't have a country. I'm just telling you. And if you think I'm being dramatic, you're wrong. I've seen this before.
Lou, they're not merely liberal or progressive. They're Marxist. The policies that they're embracing are Marxist. They want to bring down the government of the United States. They want to destroy U.S. families, U.S. businesses. They want it their way, their control. And you have the 2030 census coming up. Their goal is to let these 20, 30, 50 million illegals in. Not that they're going to vote, not that they're going to be registered, but let them in so that they're in all of these neighborhoods, blue neighborhoods, and get counted in the census as being there. And that way, those neighborhoods get more congressional seats. Those states get more electoral votes. And then the elections going forward after that, you know, even if legal voters vote, they're going to be probably Democrats, and there's going to be more of them voting for more seats that are going to be blue seats. They'll take control of Congress. They'll take control of the White House, and that'll be a permanent change in the demographics of the United States. That's their goal. They're not bringing these migrants in across the border so they can vote. They don't even need to vote. They just need them to come in and be counted as people living in the United States. That's all they want, and that's all they need.
You know what's interesting about this, Tom? You touched on this whole voting thing. Objectively speaking, so we're clear. The Democrats do not believe you should provide ID when you go into a polling station to vote. I don't know what planet you're on. The Democrats believe we should have mail-in ballots, which lends itself to fraud. We've already had jurisdictions identify the fact that they've received more mail-in ballots in the jurisdiction than people registered to vote. You know, and I want to say one thing to the Democrats. You need to do your own laundry. kind of like we do in a police department. I won't get into how we do it, but we do it. And the bottom line is this. If you think the exercise here is to cheat and you then question why people accuse you of cheating, let me remind you of Bernie Sanders, who accused you of undermining his primary efforts during his primary process with Hillary Clinton. Donna Brazile lost her job at CNN because twice they caught her feeding the questions in advance of the primary debate with Bernie Sanders. Mrs. Hillary Clinton got this advantage. You want to know why we distrust you? Look at what's going on with this president. Most of all, starting with his wife. I don't know what planet you are living on that you think exploiting your husband like this. I don't know if she wants to stay in power or be visible or be part of it. And I don't mean to be critical of Jill Biden. But if you're going to tell the truth, how could you not see this decline that George Clooney saw at a fundraiser, that numerous other people have admitted to seeing? You didn't see it? You weren't at the fundraiser with Julia Roberts and George Clooney, who, by the way, buy influence in the government by giving particular candidates money. That's what that's all about. You've got to understand how disgusting this process is. Hollywood is a bunch of entertainers. They're not celebrities, folks. I'm not going to go off on that topic. I'm going to stay with this whole discussion about what Tom just touched on about voting. You wonder why we don't trust you? Nobody in government, until they suddenly stepped all over himself in June, which is kind of an interesting conversation too, Tom. You and I will have a conversation about this in 1 second. Unprecedented. Two men that are not nominated as presidents are having a debate for the presidency. And that whole thing was orchestrated by the Democrats. I'm just speculating. This is just conjecture. May be my opinion, but I feel like they set him up, knowing they needed to get rid of him sooner rather than later. And if you don't think the Democrats are capable of that, go look at Bernie Sanders. By the way, go talk to this young girl, Tulsi Gabbard, who was the number 2 in the DNC in 2016 behind Wasserman Schultz out of Florida. What happened when she backed Bernie Sanders? She'll tell you. She told it on CBS. I watched the interview. She was warned and threatened. And then Hillary Clinton came out the next election cycle and accused her of being a Russian asset. In case you haven't connected the dots on Hillary Clinton, it isn't Bill Clinton that's the problem. It's Hillary Dillery Doc. And I don't mind saying it. Monica Lewinsky was my client. Guys, you don't know my background as extensively as maybe you'd like to. Don't talk to me about the Clintons and don't talk to me about Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton didn't turn around and tell him, don't get me the questions to the primary debate with Sanders prior to CNN. She went along with it. Her laptop was in the possession of Uma Abedin, that had classified information, and Uma's husband was sending pictures of Mr. Winky to who he thought was a 14-year-old, happened to be an undercover. These are the Democrats. What the hell happened to you? You're anti-Semitic? You're anti-American? I listened to Tlaib the first day Donald Trump is sworn into office, and you guys should edit this. I'm going to impeach that motherfucker. This is the conduct and the demeanor of our elected officials? That's exactly what she said verbatim. Or you've got this guy Bowman pulling a fire alarm. Oh, what happened to him? That's right, pled guilty. And I think he got a $1,000 fine or something absurd. You know, I'm trying to very gingerly go where Tom wants me to go, which is to tell you where we have to vote in November. But I'd rather have you just listen to truthful information. I want you to challenge and get there on your own. Tom's not shy about telling you who to vote for, and I don't blame him. He's right. I just have a different approach to this.
No, I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm telling you who not to vote for. This machine that's in office right now is corrupt, and their goal here with the migrants coming across the border is to remain in power. That's what I've said. They're not here they could care less how many people get murdered by migrants. They could care less about the quality of life. They could care less about the number of jobs that are taken from blacks and minorities by these migrants that are coming in here. All they care about is get the numbers of the population higher so that the census determines that there should be more congressional districts or the size of the district should be increased. And then they'll have their Democratic voters in those districts take control. And then there'll be Democrats in power forever. That's the agenda. Not the safety of the American people or possible terrorists in the country. None of that. They could care less about that. They only care about the power they have and keeping the power. that they have. Period.
I wonder how the Democrats feel about the fact that every major city, the crime is rampant because they do not prosecute. I wonder if there's any conscience attached to this discussion or morality. How do you just seem to think that this is okay, that this is acceptable? You know what the fallout is? People are fleeing your major cities. You look at a state like California, and what's been done to California under the rule of the Democrats is criminal. I've been going there since 1971. I know that state more about it than most people living there. I've traveled it up and down so many times, I've lost track. You want to see a beautiful place? Guys, don't go to Europe. Go to California. Drive that coast. Go north up towards Mendocino. Go south down to Carmel on the Monterey Peninsula or Big Sur. Go see San Simeon Castle, which is just absolutely incredible what they built in the turn of the century in 1900. Look at this state. Corporations are leaving there in record numbers. As we're listening to Gavin Newsom tell you, corporations come here to flourish. That's a lie. You want to know why gas is so expensive in California? Because he's got one gas tax that's 85 cents. I listened to him in a discussion with Sean Hannity, who should be ashamed of himself with all the softball bullshit he pulled with Newsom. You know, talk about the gasoline companies are gouging. They're gouging us. Well, they're only gouging California? The gas is twice what it is in New York. What'd you guys fall off the back of an Apple truck? This is your country, guys. And Tom is right. I hate to say it. You know, I wish Donald Trump had gone to finishing school? Absolutely. He's a very typical New Yorker. I know because I'm a New Yorker. You slip with your tongue or trip and fall, we goof all over you. It's just our sense of humor. It's done in a very lighthearted, humorous way. He's taken it to another level. I understand what's offending you. I don't see the sense in being, hurtfully demeaning towards people or comments or assessments of the way they look I don't get any of that with this guy. But independent of that, which I'm able to divorce myself from, I look at his administration compared to this administration. Guys, you got to be kidding me. And they lie to you about he inherited a 9% inflation rate. It was barely over 1%. This is a fact. Check us. Okay, it's been redundantly reported to you by the President of the United States. Maybe that's the byproduct of his lack of cognitive skills. I don't know. But guys, this is about the truth here today. And we're on a collision course with time. We're going to run out of time if we don't get this border under control. And guys, it's being penetrated every day, independent of this lie about this executive order. Oh, we're having 2,500 people come a day. How do you calculate that through over 50 border crossing locations? Tell me how that works. What do you guys have a counter and you're communicating? I got 100 here, 2,000 here. Hold, you better hold. Guys, this is how little they think of us also, that they stop at nothing to insult your intelligence. And all I'm saying is this, let's just fix it. Okay, I got the mistakes that were made. John Kennedy's probably rolling over in his grave, as is Robert, at the notion of this Democrat Party becoming what it has become. Tlaib, Omar, Jayapal, Adam Schiff, Nadler, Blumenthal, Schumer, people without courage, some anti-Semitic, the others who are Jewish or refuse to speak out against it. Where's the outrage? And let me say something else as long as I'm on this tirade. And Tom, you could jump in anytime you like. I'm listening to this nonsense about Donald Trump's, he's going to be a dictator. I heard it come out of his mouth at the time he said it, because I watch all the media outlets, by the way. He said, oh, yeah, they're concerned I'm going to be a dictator. He says, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. This is what he said. I'm closing that border and we're going to open up. We're going to drill so we can give some financial relief to this country. I listened to them twist, intentionally lie to you in the media. People that pose as journalists. This is not right. They need oversight, by the way, with the media. I've said it a million times. Go ahead, Tom.
He didn't say I'm going to be a dictator on day one. I'm going to be a dictator for a day on day one, for a day. And he was going to issue all these orders and all that. Well, that's basically what Biden did on day one with all the signatures on executive orders and all of that. So it's really the same thing that was already done. It's done by many presidents, writing all these executive orders. So that's basically what he said. He didn't say he was going to stay a dictator. And this idea that if he gets elected, it's going to take the military to pull him out of the White House. Did it take the military last time he didn't win the election?
Tom, let's go.
In 2020, when Biden got elected, they didn't have to evict him. He left.
Let's go after the bloodbath comment also, guys, that I watched him say. What he was saying is this simple. You can go back and pull up the tape on YouTube. He was citing the fact that China is manufacturing cars in Mexico. And when they flood them into the United States, it's going to cause a bloodbath with our auto industry. That is what was said. Not that if I don't get elected, there's going to be a bloodbath. You know, I don't know why there's no oversight with some of these jokers on CNN and MSNBC, because that's where that message is coming from. They can grow the chops and sit across from me and tell me what you've said. And then we'll play it for you while you're sitting here. That's how disgusting this is. Yet they're allowed to continue to do this. And now I'm going to jump on the media a little bit, because the reason everybody is so misguided in this country today is because of the media. I don't know of any other institution that operates without oversight. Not the FBI, not police agencies, not the fire department, not political people, not people in corporate America. When they stumble and fall, be it Boeing or whoever it might be, oversight, not the media. They're allowed to get on MSNBC and CNN and spew these lies, plain and simple, and I defy anyone to challenge me. I'll make it simple for you. All we have to do is pull up the tapes, folks. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Look at the picture. Listen to the picture. You'll hear exactly what was said. Instead of this comment about if he doesn't get elected, there'll be a bloodbath. That's not what was said. He was warning this country what will happen to our auto industry if the Chinese start to put cars in our country. And his solution to that are tariffs, folks. It worked his last administration. It would probably work this one. This whole thing about dictator, Tom just elaborated on it. Not accurate. This is just one lie after the other. You know, when are we going to start to demonstrate some responsibility to our children and their future in this country overall in its future? I'm just curious. What has to happen here, folks? You know, recently they grabbed 8 individuals that they believe were staging a terrorist plot because of this border. That's a Democrat policy. They stand there and lie to you and say the Republicans did this. No, they didn't. And if they did, I'd be telling the Republicans the same thing I'm telling you about the Democrats. This is like one lie after the other. We lie to you about everything here today. This gun control, I'm not going to go off on it, but it's one gigantic lie. We're manufacturing guns like it's going out of style. And for people that don't know what ghost guns are, these are guns that have no serial numbers on them that our government, our ATF, the regulatory agency, has no idea they exist. They're being manufactured in mass numbers because of the distrust of the government, by the way. This is some corner we've painted ourselves into, but there's a way out, guys. We start to install one set of rules that apply to everyone, right? Accountability and consequence. Let's start with a basic premise like that. Not every time we back up against something, we figure out how we're going to twist it, contort it, rationalize it, and lie about it. And I don't care who it is anymore. There's got to be accountability. There is none in this country. It's shameful, Tom. I'm sure you have some feelings on this topic. I want to talk about January 6th. Wait, let me take you here, Tom, excuse me. Talk to me about January 6th, Tom. Let Tom explain to you what's going on with January 6th. And let me preface it by saying this, and I guarantee you Tom agrees. Anybody went to that Capitol of ill intent to harm people or to do damage, to desecrate our Capitol, should be held and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But punishment has to be proportionate to the offense. By the way, before I go on to Tom, we're talking about an insurrection, which lends itself to a takeover. Tell me how you perpetrate that without being armed with an entire mechanism of individuals called Capitol Police that are armed and a response from the DC Metro. But go ahead, Tom. Give us a little background on this whole thing with January 6th, which is just troubling. You talk about the suspension of your civil rights, violation of the Constitution, if you would, Tom.
Okay, you had more than 1,200 people that have been arrested and charged. FBI investigating this and calling it one of the biggest investigations in the history of the Bureau. And a few of those where it was actually provable that they tried to hurt a police officer or damage property in the Capitol, fine, they should be prosecuted, no question. But the vast majority of them did not. They were merely showed up to protest peacefully. And in many cases, it's been shown in videos that they were led into through open doors into the main part of the Capitol and just kind of like touring the Capitol. And many of the arrests were people that never went in the Capitol, but were out on the Capitol grounds attending a protest, which is allowed under our Constitution, First Amendment. So you've had the stats basically doctored to make it look like the entire thing was an insurrection to overthrow the government and overthrow the election that Trump had just lost, all of that. And none of that is true. The majority of that is absolutely untrue. And the Supreme Court basically recently has issued rulings that are going to require a number of those cases to be looked at again because they felt that they were improperly prosecuted and convicted. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's the main issue that I have with 9/11, and many have is that you have over 1,200 people arrested. At least 1,000 of them did nothing more than show up. And then they were tracked down by phone records, credit card records, and other things to say they were on the Capitol grounds, and therefore they're guilty of insurrection.
No one was apprehended with a firearm during that entire episode, January 6th. And let me just say, once again, if you came there with the intent to damage property, assault our law enforcement agents, desecrate the Capitol, you should be prosecuted. But if you listen to what Tom is telling you, I'll simplify it. If you were in proximity of that place, they went after you. They're trying to scare the American public out of ever trying something like that again. It begs the question, why would so many people have converged in this unhappy manner? And I listened to all this nonsense with Donald Trump. I don't think Donald Trump knew that was coming. I don't think Pelosi knew it was coming. I don't think Muriel Bowser, is that Muriel Bowser's is she Washington?
Mayor.
The mayor.
Yeah, mayor of Washington.
Right. I don't think she knew it was coming. They could have planned for this. In fact, if you watch the video of Nancy Pelosi, it was taken by her daughter for a documentary, she admitted that they should have had the National Guard there. I don't know how dumb is these days. But the
Pelosi and Bowser and the other leadership in the Congress were informed 2 or 3 days ahead of the event by the FBI that this large protest group was coming. And that's why Trump offered them something like 10,000 National Guardsmen to protect the Capitol, and they turned it down. Oh, we don't need it. And a number of the Capitol Police, as testified by the former chief, Sund, who said that a number of they were told, no problem, you don't even need all your people to be on duty that day. So they didn't even have the fullest complement of Capitol police officers that they needed. They had zero National Guard. So, no, this is something that had very clearly Pelosi and the Democratic Party wanted that protest to get out of hand to justify their position that, look, these are Trump people and they don't obey the law.
Tom, let me ask you about the January 6th hearings where all of these documents have disappeared.
Normally, if you have a legitimate congressional committee that's legitimately authorized, it has to be made up of members of both parties, both sides, and like in this case, the Republicans would have been allowed to have their choices be members of the committee. Pelosi vetoed that. Said, no. The Republican representatives will be Liz Cheney, who voted to impeach Trump, and Kinzinger from Illinois, congressman, who voted to impeach Trump. And the Republicans were not allowed to have Jim Jordan or the other pro-administration side. So you had all Democrats except for a couple of Republicans who hated Trump anyway. Then it's not a legitimate hearing. So they have all of these issues with how they conducted it. It's not a normal committee, congressional committee. Therefore, when they do interviews and hear all of these positive interviews that Trump did not authorize an insurrection, that kind of went against their narrative, they had that evidence. Then it turns up now, oh, gee, they lost it. What happened to those files? What happened to those recorded interviews that took place? So how suspicious is that? It was a kangaroo court in the first place. And then the court didn't even maintain its own records.
You know, what's interesting here, guys, is that we're hot and heavy. And he listened to him mention a couple of Republicans, Kissinger and Liz Cheney. They were hot and heavy on Trump, which I'm okay with that. I got it. Where were you, or how did you feel about what Hillary Clinton did, acid washing 33,000 emails that were under subpoena, or damaging all the devices that they had this technology under subpoena, or the mishandling of classified information, or this whole mishandling and lie about what went on in Benghazi? What's your feelings about Fast and Furious with Eric Holder, Lois Lerner in the IRS, Shinseki with the Veterans Administration? What do you guys have, selective enforcement here? I know we have selective reporting with the media. I know we have selective enforcement now because we just seem to prosecute those based on our political agenda, not based on the truth. You know, what's interesting here.
Lou, the Democrats say that if Trump gets in, he's going to retaliate. He's going to get them. He's going to go after all these people. And you just brought up Hillary Clinton and others. Did he go after them for everything they did, the lies they told, lying to Congress, lying to the public, or Eric Holder? Eric Holder got held in contempt of court or contempt of Congress. What happened to him? Nothing. So you have all these issues. There was no retaliation on Trump's part, none. Even though at Trump rallies in 2016, people in the audience would start yelling, lock her up, lock her up. That was the public sentiment, that she had destroyed evidence on purpose to try to stay out of trouble. And the public knew that. Public thought, okay, prosecute, use what you can in the terms of evidence against her. Nothing was done. No prosecution, none of it. With any of them.
You could cut the hypocrisy with a knife. You know, I mean, you know, the important thing right now, guys, is that we learn from these mistakes, and moving forward, we start to do things first and foremost that are in the best interest of our country. And I remind everyone, please try to love your children more than you love your politics. And I'm really worried that isn't the case today. If you don't think that these topics are going to bump into your children, I just don't quite know what to say to you. I do want to say one thing that's very disturbing because, and I don't want to go off on this tangent, but we look at all of this transgender stuff going on with children and parents are on board. Guys, let me just tell you something about parenting in this country today. It isn't gone in totality, but it's been gravely damaged. On top of the fact that the common denominator to mass shootings is a firearm, there's a failed parenting element attached also, and I could give you a much more in-depth explanation as to why that happens. But the bottom line is it's time to course correct this country, and that's all there is to it. Unfortunately, I would say people are severely divided with both of these candidates. I mean, I don't know what to say about the vice president suddenly becoming the presidential candidate. She polled less than 2% during the primaries, didn't get past round one. You know, we listened to Joe Biden say he was going to pick a woman. How about you just pick the best person, regardless of their gender, their ethnicity, their religion, lifestyle choices, culture? Why not pick the best person? And then you pick this person, and suddenly we're hearing Bashir, Mark in Arizona, Mark, it'll come, it doesn't matter. Shapiro, Pennsylvania, Wilk, all these guys, Amy Klobuchar, all these people have been floating around here, and Kamala Harris is leading the charge. And all I suggest that you do is not listen to me or Tom, but go pull up some of the sound bites from the statements she's made. It'll appall you what her agenda is for this country. And guys, Tom pointed out something that's very, very true. If we don't course correct this country in the next election cycle in November, we're not going to have a country here. This border policy is not going to cessate. It's going to probably escalate. That's the truth attached to this discussion. We're going to close for today, guys. This has been Operation Truth. You can communicate with us through operationtruthofficial.com. Please become part of this discussion. You know, we did have a little hiatus recently to regroup. You know, I explained to you that we're trying to take this to a much larger platform. I don't mind doing the podcast. I kind of like them, especially if people are listening to us. But Tom and I intend on getting this message out in a much broader sense. We need to change the thinking in this country, eliminate your bias, embrace the objectivity and truth attached to these discussions, and think about your children. And if you think what's going on in this country today it lends itself to the betterment of your children, you're grossly misguided. And we can prove it to you. Again, I tell you, challenge us. Go in and look at some of these things that are being reported to you about what Trump said and what Hillary Clinton said and what they did and what they didn't did. It's out there for you to see. We're not telling you something that isn't factually driven. And please know this about Tom Fuentes. This guy should be running the FBI. And probably a week, the integrity and the pride that agency once held would be reinstalled. I can tell you that. Tom brings a lot to this podcast. Never underscore the value of. Where I want to go next episode is a revisit to this Kennedy assassination, because I think people need to understand the importance of history. Tom is also an historian, can speak quite literately to many topics involving World War II and Vietnam. And this Kennedy assassination, boy, was this really a defining moment. The thing it did was it just jarred this nation. It robbed us of our innocence. And to think that there was an agenda that killed this man is just so disturbing, and we had 2 children grow up without their father. We've got some pretty cold and dark people here. And I hate to say it, sometimes there are a need for people like that, but not to be employed within our country. They're to deal with our adversaries. John Kennedy wasn't an adversary. He was inspirational. Thank you for joining us today. Tom, thank you as always. This has been Operation Truth.
Thank you.
You can contact us through operationtruthofficial.com. We'll see you again.